Test, test. All right. Okay. Welcome, everybody. This is the Chutabava from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at all 12 sun and rising sign horoscopes for the month of January. I thought it would be fun to do a live cast. It's the holidays, it's almost New Year's, so hopefully some people can catch this live and enjoy it. We will be putting timestamps on this afterward so that if you're watching this and you're trying to figure out where your sun or rising sign lands in the overall video, we'll have some timestamps once this is all finished. So you can look for those in the comments section. Where are you all coming from today? I'd love to hear where you guys are at in the world. It's always good to hear. Paula from sunny South Africa. That's awesome. Manchester, UK, from Mexico, Colorado. Great. That's awesome. So glad that you guys are here today. Before I dive in to horoscopes for the month of January, I want to remind everybody that I have 3 days left in my annual Kickstarter. We are at 1,039 backers. We moved past our stretch goal, which is unbelievable. At this point, I'll be honest with you, it is very possible, depending on how we do these last 3 days, that we could bump up the creation of a donation-based astrology reading clinic into 2022. I had projected that if we met our stretch goal, that we would probably be ready by 2023 to launch a donation-based reading clinic, which would be available for people who don't have as much income. It's, when you're a solo practitioner, as most astrologers are, you have to offer competitive rates. And as you get more experience, your rate and more clientele, your rates go up. And that's part of how your business model works for most astrologers. But I've always, since I began my practice, I started with a full year of doing donation-based readings to build experience. And I got to serve a population of people who didn't necessarily have the income to buy a reading. And I feel like, why should that population be priced out of readings? At the same time, professional astrologers have to have competitive rates. So it's this conundrum. And I decided a few years ago, if I ever did well enough, that my dream would be to build a reading clinic where people could go back to the donation model that I started with, but I could have a full staff of my best readers who had come through my programs, and people who needed more experience, who could make some money. I will take nothing from this, who will make some money and allow people out there who don't have as much money to pick up a donation-based reading. So depending on how we do these last 3 days, it's very possible that could get pushed up to 2000. We could be ready to launch that sometime in 2022. So 3 days left to go. You're supporting a really good cause for me putting together a staff of people, putting some training protocols in place, getting a staff person on staff to completely manage that donation-based reading clinic. These are all things that take time, money, energy, and resources. So again, some good stuff to still raise money for in the last 3 days. 3 days left to go. So you can pick up 50% off tuition to any of my courses, which is a really good deal. My wife Ashley is going to be coming on. We're going to be talking about herbs to help you through 2021 based on the astrology, and her herbal apprenticeship, which she's been teaching for 10 years, is also on sale through the Kickstarter. And then if you want to do the deep dive into 2021's astrology, I have a special video on that. Your sun rising sign horoscope for the whole year ahead is in there as a reward you can pick up. So there's lots of good stuff. Here is the link to the Kickstarter. It's in the comments section. Everything you give at this point is going toward me building that in 2022. We've met all of our goals. I'm going to be able to pay for my whole staff for 2021. I'm going to be able to, support my family in a lot of things, and obviously build towards some of our goals. So if you like this work and you believe in some of the things we're trying to do, pitch in and support. Really appreciate it. Okay, so all of that being said, oh, and thank you to everybody who's already donated. 1,039 people have already donated. If you guys can believe this, I started off 7 years ago doing this, and I had like, I don't know, like 150 or 200 people that supported my work. So to see it grow over the time, just keep plugging away at what you love. That's all I can tell people. Just keep doing what you love and do it from the heart and do it for service to others. You know, that's the only thing that I can think of that has brought me any of this support, is to just keep doing what you love, do it for the right reasons, keep giving it to people for the right reasons, and good things will happen. So at any rate, okay, now enough of my chattering. I'm going to get into your horoscopes for January. I'm really narrowing it down this month, and I feel like you guys are gonna, I don't want you guys to feel shortchanged, but let me explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing. So here is the chart on the screen so that you can see it. January basically boils down to this. You have Mars moving into Taurus, and that Mars moving into Taurus happens around the 6th of the month. As soon as it moves in, then between the 13th and the 31st, everything that's happening for the month is basically happening across the Taurus and Aquarius sign axis through that square. You have on the 13th, you have Mars squaring Saturn. On the 17th, on the 17th, you have Jupiter squaring Uranus. On the 20th, you have Mars conjoined Uranus. And on the 23rd, you have Mars square Jupiter. Then on the 28th, you have a full moon in Leo that is going to reignite and create a T-square across the fixed axis, reigniting the same exact transits. And then on the 31st, the sun will square Mars from Aquarius to Taurus. So here's what I'm doing to make this simpler this month for myself and for everybody, because I have also a huge amount of recordings that I'm making right now for the Kickstarter and so forth. I've simplified this month down to the whole sign places of Aquarius and Taurus. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to take out a few planets from our view and really sort of simplify the view on the screen. So you can see it now. Let me just make sure that you guys are looking at the same thing over on YouTube. Okay, great. Just one second. All right. So now that the view is simplified, here's what we're going to do for each sign. We're going to walk through which areas of your life are going to be impacted by this crazy series of events between Aquarius and Taurus, starting with the Aries on the ascendant. So if you're an Aries rising, your great conjunction happened in the 11th house. And this month, the energy in Taurus with Mars and Uranus is in your 2nd house, and you're going to be seeing square energy between the 2nd and the 11th. So there's a number of themes that are going to come up for you if this is your chart. And you can use this if you're an Aries rising, an Aries sun sign. I like the rising sign best because it's going to sync up with the configuration of your chart by whole signs. It's going to be the closest to your chart, especially if you use whole sign houses. But let's talk about some of these topics that are going to be activated this month. The first one is going to be money, resources, income, and expenditures. Let's say business and profits or losses. Those are the kinds of things that are going to be happening for you if you're an Aries rising through the Mars-Uranus combination. Now, there can be a lot of breakthroughs when Mars and Uranus get together in your 2nd house. So I could see people breaking free from debt, or maybe taking a little bit of a gamble and investing in something, or something perhaps dramatic and slightly unexpected happening around finances. I would advise caution in terms of being really sort of rebellious or reckless around money. And then the other place in the chart that's getting action is the 11th house if you're an Aries rising, which is going to be house 11. Here we go. Friends, groups, allies. Hope I spelled that right. Yeah, allies, benefactors, colleagues, dreams, hopes, and wishes for the future. So the great conjunction energy of Saturn and Jupiter all year long is going to be lighting up your 11th house if you're an Aries rising, really focusing on groups of people in your life, or new groups of people, or changes within groups or organizations, a reprioritization of your friendships. Well, these are more important to me, and maybe some are less important that are changing. You can also see big changes within, say, a company that you work for. It's a very good year in terms of finding, what do I want to say, collaborators, people to work with you toward your dreams and goals. It's a year where you could easily see yourself sort of redefining your vision for the future, especially in the 11th house, a place that's associated with long-term dreams and wishes and hopes, and oftentimes the support or good luck that you almost need to move toward those dreams or goals. And that's in communication with the house of money and resources and income and so forth right now. So watch for that to be very dynamic for you in the month ahead. And that's the breakdown for the month. You could break down each individual transit and try to differentiate all of it. But when it's just a when it's just a cluster screw like that, it's just, the 13th through the 31st, just everything, including the full moon, is just lighting that axis up, right? You could see the full moon on the 28th in the 5th house, highlighting for a moment, bringing in the topics of children, joy, creativity, play, romance, and that's a pretty fortunate house. That was called the house of good fortune in ancient astrology. And so the full moon could bring some good luck. I feel like Aries, anytime you have a full moon in the 5th house, it's can be a lucky full moon. So these are the splits though of topics that you're going to see, and watch for these to just totally go off between the 13th and the 31st of the month. That's kind of your forecast for the month. All right, we're going to put Taurus on the ascendant. Okay, so if you are a Taurus rising, this energy is in your 1st house, and the abundance of planets are in your 10th house in Aquarius. And then you have the full moon on January 28th in your 4th house. So these are the topics. First of all, let's just begin with your 1st house, because Mars Uranus in the 1st house is going to emphasize individuality, freedom, defiance, personal rebellion. What else? Potential revolution in health or personal appearance. The topic of health in general, we'll just say that. It's a month where if you're a Taurus rising, like I am, I'm going to be very careful when like lifting weights or working out. It's an easy month to injure yourself unintentionally, especially if you're exerting yourself too much. So you do want to be careful of that. Also, Mars Uranus in the 1st house has that feeling of, I don't care what anyone thinks. I'm going to do me. I'm going to do what I want. Like that's a lot of emphasis on that need to break free and throw off limitations and get more freedom. That's not a bad thing. Sometimes it can be a little reckless or impulsive or self-indulgent, but this energy may also kind of be pushing you to do something that you need to do to get free of obligations or duties. At the same time, you've got in the 10th house, your great conjunction this year. It's a career year for you. Like I know, because the great conjunction's in my 10th house, I'm a Taurus rising. Like I'm going to be busy this year, especially if the Kickstarter's gone off like it has. Like, holy crap. I wasn't expecting that at all. And it's gone off. And now it's like, okay, well, now it's time to get to work and to do a lot of things. And I like the energy of January being very galvanizing for creativity and independence. Personally, I'm looking forward to that. But then I look at my 10th and I'm like, yeah, there's going to be a boatload of work. I've got to get all the Kickstarter readings recorded and so many things sent out to people, thank you gifts sent out to people. So it's like, yeah, that 10th house energy this month, if you're a Taurus rising, is going to emphasize work, duty, obligations in the world, reputation, action in the workplace, professional life, etc. So that's where the conversation is this month. And then at the end of the month, on the 31st or on the 28th, when the full moon comes through in Leo, you're tossing in the themes of home and family, home and hearth, domestic life, land, property, and so forth. So the tension there between house 1 and 10 is where it's at for you this month. It wouldn't be surprising to see people feeling the tension between, a lot of movement and activity in the workplace, coupled with this need to reinvent oneself or to break free of things that feel limiting. But it's probably going to be not entirely easy to do so, because that Saturn in the 10th will pull you back to the responsibilities of the workplace. And those are going to be in a pretty tense dialogue in January and in February. But a lot of expansion here personally, and a lot of growth in both areas as well. So it's a mixed bag. All right, that's what we've got for Taurus rising. We're going to move forward to Gemini rising and put these on the ascendant. Gemini on the ascendant, excuse me. So now we're taking the Mars-Uranus energy, putting it in the 12th, and the big stellium in Aquarius is happening in the 9th. So what do we have here? Well, again, this is from the 13th through the 31st. These two houses are going to be the ones primarily lit up. By the 28th, you'll get a little bit of some full moon action very briefly in the 3rd house. So what to make of that? Well, first of all, when you have Mars-Uranus in the 12th house, that same reckless potential, the kind of rebellious, individuating energy of Mars and Uranus can get you into a little bit more trouble this month if you're a Gemini rising, because it's in a house associated with self-destructiveness. It's a house that's in our blind spot. That's how ancient astrologers actually talked about the 12th house as the 1st house, which represents the native and the steering wheel of the ship of life. The 12th house is in aversion to it, which means the person can't really see it. So a lot of what the 12th house means, a lot of the 12th house meaning comes from this idea that it's about things, people, places, events, and energies that we can't necessarily see, which is why it's also associated with self-undoing and ruin and secret enemies and things that undermine us. And it was actually called the house of the evil spirit because it has to do with things that can really take us off course somehow. Now, on the other hand, if you work in a 12th house setting, if you serve in a 12th house setting, for example, people who work with those who are lost, hurt, suffering, sick, in any way, then maybe this transit this month has something to do with changes happening in that kind of a work environment or within that dimension of your life. If you're someone who does some kind of healing or helping work, or if you're someone who does humanitarian or charity work, the main root of the 12th house is going to have a lot to do with suffering or being marginalized somehow or self-destructive or something like that. This energy is not so good for those kinds of topics if you're a Gemini rising. But on the other hand, so just the first advice that I have is to just be careful about how that rebellious, almost militaristic, rebellious energy of Mars and Uranus is affecting you. On the other hand, if you need to break free from something, and if you're noticing some kind of what I want to call it is like almost like an influence that's trying to undermine you from somewhere else or from someone else, it might be a really good month to break free from that influence. For example, even if you're a smoker or if you're a drinker or you're a gambler or something like that, this would be a good month to perhaps say, I've had enough. Enough is enough. I'm not going to let this thing undermine me anymore. Mars Uranus at the end of the day does mean freedom. So freedom from shadows, freedom from undermining influences, that would be a potential. Now, at the same time, so let's enter this in. 12th house. We'll just say self-undoing, negative and hidden influences. Let's say healing or helping work, etc. On the other hand, we have the ninth house coming into play. And the ninth house is going to involve things like religion, philosophy, education, foreign lands, long journeys. Let's see, what else? Political ideologies, beliefs, maybe law or the legal system. So these are just a few. So I hate to say it, but like for some Geminis out there, Gemini risings, this is going to be a month where you could get in trouble with some breaking some rule or breaking some law. It doesn't have to be the law. It could be a rule or a policy at work. But regardless, you want to be careful about sort of getting in trouble somehow because of not following a policy or a rule or a law or something like that. On the other hand, maybe it's a month where you are redefining your values, your beliefs, your ideologies, and you're needing to make a break in some ways from an outdated way of looking at the world or an outdated set of ideas. So I like this as a potential month of sort of rebellious and defiant intellectual energies. But I'm like cautious as well, because you also get the feeling that this could be a month where your beliefs or ideas become extreme in some ways, and maybe rigid, and then somewhat like you could act on things with too much zeal, or the enthusiasm could take over and you could become a little reckless. So that's the thing to be careful for this month. A little bit of a more, I think this is a little bit one of the more challenging horoscopes for the month for Geminis. Still, there's a lot there in the ninth house to help you. It's a good month if you stick to your principles and your highest standards, your highest values, and are very careful of undermining influences, then I think you'll be fine. Okay, so that's what we've got for Geminis. Let's go ahead and put Cancer on the ascendant. Now, if you are a Cancer rising, we are putting Mars and Uranus in the 11th and the big stellium into the 8th. And I didn't mention, by the way, the full moon for Geminis in the 3rd, but it was included in what I was saying in terms of intellectual sort of rebelliousness. Now, and then you have the full moon for Cancers at the end of the month in the 2nd house. So let's take a look at these areas. First of all, let's talk about the Mars-Uranus energy in the 11th. So this is, again, going to be a place of friends, groups, colleagues, let's say benefactors or helpers, dreams, hopes, and wishes for the future. So Mars-Uranus in this house can create, first of all, there can be themes of rebelliousness, confrontation, sudden and erratic events with regard to friendships or within groups of people that you know, or within communities that you belong to, within professional networks or religious groups that you belong to, within professional organizations. So don't be surprised if the boat gets really rocked within any of those settings, or if there's some big changes for you this month in those areas of your life. It's also a good month to start redefining your long-term hopes, wishes, and dreams for the future, especially with the Mars-Uranus quality, taking some risks. So I like that this month for you if you're Cancer rising. Now, not a good month to get into the middle of some kind of fray, some kind of controversy within groups or organizations, because I feel like it could be pretty toxic. But let's go over to the 8th house where the Aquarius stellium is located. In this case, the 8th house is going to be other people's money, spouse or partner's money, taxes, debts, penalties, penalties, also death, fear, and anxiety about the future. So, and then, of course, at the very end of the month, you have the full moon coming into the 2nd house, which is going to be about your own money, income and expenditures, business, finances, things like that. So there is this theme for Cancers this month about money and finances, potentially paying off debts or loans, taxes, reevaluating your financial situation. So that could be a big part of the monthly conversation for you if you're a Cancer rising. But the eighth house emphasis is also about karmic, what I want to call it, are karmic obligations, karmic entanglement with others. The eighth house was a house that it's the house that precedes the setting place in the Western horizon. And that means that planets are preparing to set and go into Hades. It's kind of like you can't take anything with you physically in this world. There's a lot of fear in the eighth house about losing things. Like eventually in the eighth house, you lose things, or there's debts or obligations. There's a bill that comes due with eighth house stuff. So sometimes if you have a lot in the eighth house, there's going to be things that are coming to you because other people owe it to you somehow, or it's almost like a karmic inheritance that you are due in this lifetime. And that can be negative or positive. Potentially with Jupiter there this month, it could be really positive for you. But with Saturn there, it's probably mixed. And there's probably going to be some debts and bills that are due as well that are more intense or extreme. So a little bit of a mixture, but I like that the full moon in Leo is in the second house. That's a nice full moon that should emphasize good things around money and finances. There's also there's a lot happening here around the social dimension of your life and potential karmic entanglements within groups or organizations that are more intense. Maybe they even involve dues or money or loans or grants or something like that. Okay, so if you're a Cancer rising, that's your outlook for the month. Let's go forward to Leo rising. So for Leo rising, this is falling into the angular houses. The fixed signs, this month are getting rocked. I mean, if you're a fixed sign, 2021, if you're born with a fixed sign rising, especially, 2021 is a huge year for you because you've got this whole dynamic between Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus playing out all year long in the angular houses, which are very strong. So in this case, we have, let's begin by looking at the 10th house, where Mars and Uranus is located. You've got career or profession. You've got reputation, action in the world. Let's say fame or achievement, etc. So Mars Uranus in that house can be it can sort of galvanize and bring about some real change in movement. And the themes of rebellion, innovation, or sudden disruptions regarding your career or in the workplace are likely this month. The second set of themes is coming from your 7th house, which is pretty straightforward: marriage, others, social dimension of life, endings or resolution. This is a place where planets set, so it's a place where things come to completion. Also, let's say it's related to sexuality. In the ancient world, this was related to sexuality. This house was more than any other house. And the reason for that is that planets are sinking below the horizon and disappearing in this house. And that was associated with a man entering a woman. That image of the planet going into and disappearing into the Western horizon. So that house was associated with sexuality more overtly than any other house. So the potential for these themes to be important. Now, remember, the full moon at the very end of the month, January 28th, is in your own home sign and first house. So there is going to be a balance that you're trying to strike this month between the emphasis on relationships and your social life and the need to be yourself. Leo rising, oftentimes the emphasis is on oneself. You're a sun sign rising, which means that need to shine out and be select and unique is very powerful. If you think of the sun in the daytime sky, it's the only thing you see. Once the sun goes down, then everything else comes out, all the other planets and all the stars. Leo sometimes, as we all know, is going to be solar in that they stand out. They're the single luminous thing. Well, Aquarius, a Saturn-ruled sign, the dimmest, most distant planet, is often about things that are other, otherworldly, distant, different, the black sheep, the rebel, the outcast, as well as the innovator. And it will often bring up attention for Leo in the seventh house in terms of, you know, um, how are you living for someone or something bigger than yourself? How do you sort of dim your own light a little bit so that you have a social life that's not just revolving around yourself? But on the other hand, how do you make sure that you're not betraying yourself within your social life and conforming or, maybe hiding your own light in a negative way? So those tensions will be strong for Leos this month with so much emphasis on the seventh house. But relationships or marriage, generally speaking, can be, really pretty strong this month for you if you're a Leo rising. But then this is relating in some interesting way to this kind of revolutionary avant-garde dynamic with Mars and Uranus in your 10th house of career. So watch for those two areas of life to be in a pretty interesting dialogue this month. I could see, for example, where, is something happening in a relationship that's causing you to change your job, or is something changing in your job that's forcing you to make a change in your relationship? I see a lot of clients with these kinds of aspects in their chart when they meet someone and then they want to move and relocate to be with that person, and hence they have to find a new job. It can be things as simple as that, but watch for that combination and let me know what you see. I always like hearing from people with any of these aspects that we've been talking about. All right, we're going to go ahead and put Virgo on the ascendant now. So if you're a Virgo rising, then we're taking the Mars-Uranus energy and we're putting it into your 9th house. So let's go ahead and write up the 9th house here. Philosophy, religion, travel, beliefs, law, foreign places, etc. And then we're taking the stellium here in Aquarius in the 6th house. Oops, here we go. 6th house was a place of strife, work, labor, hardship, misfortune, accident, injury, sickness, as well as selfless sacrifice, or any kind of sacrifice. The 6th house was called the joy of Mars and the house of misfortune, and it was associated with fighters, the military. It was associated with basically blood, sweat, and tears. And that could be like a fighter or a warrior for a cause. It could be someone who's working with those who are sick, such as a surgeon or a nurse or a social worker or something like that, an aid worker. But it would also, the baseline of that house, like the 12th, is a dimension of suffering. So when you put these two places together for Virgo rising, this is a month where you could see some religious or political fervor or enthusiasm that's being fueled into doing some kind of service work or some offering yourself or your money or your time in some kind of sacrifice. It could also be, like, I would say this is not the month to get into political or ideological or religious battles with people, because someone's likely to get hurt, even if it's just hurt feelings. It is potentially a very combative month mentally, and in terms of the way that philosophy or beliefs are being mobilized to do things in the world. That could be good, but it could also mean that there's a call to arms here for Virgos. And I don't see Virgos necessarily as like the world's, most violent, people, Virgo risings or Virgo sun signs or whatever. But I would be careful with this one, because you could also get taken advantage of. Virgos tend to be very concerned with, helping, and it's a very diligent and pure. It can be very pure and concerned sign. But I would be careful of getting taken advantage of this month, or almost having your sensibilities or your beliefs sort of co-opted or taken advantage of. People could easily recruit you to do something that looks good but may exhaust you or drain you, or be more filled with combativeness or difficulties than you're anticipating. I would also look at this as a great month for some kind of review of your beliefs and your faith, and how you're putting that faith or those beliefs into action in the world. you remember the full moon at the end of the month is also going to be in your 12th house, which also it does, to me, it makes me wonder about groups of people. Moon rules your 11th, or individuals in your life who have some very powerful influence, and maybe not entirely positive one. Um, on the other hand, are there mentors or teachers coming into your life trying to help you create a change? For example, it's not uncommon when you see the ninth and the sixth coming up for people to start doing the work, whatever that means. I got to do this work on myself. I mean, on myself. And, with the moon in the 12th around this, it also seems to me like there could be some kind of leader or mentor or solar figure, like a solar figure, a moon in Leo. Obviously, we always think of Leo, we think of like big personalities, or people who like the spotlight. It's kind of cliched stuff. But the sun was also a source of wisdom. And the moon in the 12th, given everything else that's going on, could be a system of belief, or a teacher or a mentor, or someone coming into your life to sort of help get the best out of you. So I think this is an interesting one, for especially given Mars and Uranus in your ninth house this month. If you're a Virgo, like there's something, you're waiting for some kind of philosophical revolution in your life that wants to be put into action right away. So watch for that. All right, let's go forward to Libra rising. So if you're a Libra rising, we're taking the Uranus Mars energy. It's in the 8th. The stellium in Aquarius is in the 5th, and the full moon at the end of the month will end up being in the 11th. So let's start off by talking about that 8th house. The 8th house, we know, is going to be, we'll call it karmic debts coming into you or going out from you. We'll call it anxiety about the future. Remember, we can't take anything with us. So there's this feeling in the 8th house that something's going to be taken away, or some bill might be due, or a penalty might be coming, or death might be on the horizon. It's not really a house that's about death per se, as much as it is about the inevitability of things going away, or about the inevitability of loss in life in general. You can't keep everything forever. And that doesn't mean it usually does not result in literal death, but we'll put death on the list in a kind of metaphorical sense. There's also, let's be, other people's money, especially spouse. And then let's talk about the 5th house. So the 5th house, on the other hand, is the house of good fortune. We're going to talk about creativity, pleasure, romance, children, pregnancy, good luck, fortune. Okay. So first of all, for Libras this month, I've got to say that there could be some very sudden and unexpected losses or difficulties. I know that sounds a little bit ominous, but that Mars Uranus in the 8th is going to throw you a real wild card this month, and it's probably going to be about a karmic debt that is due to you or that's coming to you. That could be positive. It's not only negative, but with Mars there, I've got to think it's a little bit difficult and unexpected. That doesn't mean that the month is going to be terrible or anything disastrous is going to happen. I would say just don't be surprised if between the 13th and 31st, if you are dealt if there's a few unexpected karmic bills that come due. We'll just put it that way. Now, this could also be coming from the 5th house, which has something to do with children. If you have kids, some of these debts could be coming from your kids, like your kids could get in trouble, or your kids could be expensive for a minute, or something like that. This could also be due to, the 5th house loves to have fun, but the 5th house does have a reputation for being somewhat reckless and self-indulgent around pleasure. And so if you're drinking too much or spending too much, like this is a month where you could get a cosmic slap on the wrist for some form of self-indulgence. On the other hand, the sudden and unexpected twists and turns karmically within relationships to your children in a general way could be very powerful. And I think you could also look at this as a month where it's possible that there's some kind of breakthrough that happens unexpectedly, that although it's very difficult, put something fortunate in your lap. I've seen so many fifth house, eighth house dynamics when, unfortunately someone dies, but on the fortunate side, they end up leaving you something really special. It doesn't even necessarily have to be money. It's just could be a legacy of some kind, or they by their passing unexpectedly, you're set free somehow. I think it's going to be a very small set of it's really not the norm, it's the exception when you see something like, really unexpected death, right? But it can be that kind of thing where there's just some kind of breakthrough or sudden event that gives you something where you end up being on the receiving end of something because something difficult happens. So watch for that. And then the full moon at the end of the month could also point to the importance of groups of people in your social life. That's kind of coming in there a little bit towards the end, changes within organizations or groups. It wouldn't be surprising. For example, I'll give you another one that's like not as bad, but it could be something like this. A change happens in an organization, a change of leadership comes in during the month and unexpectedly leaves you without the boss you're used to. You're afraid for your job. Maybe you get fired, but you get a good severance package and then you end up finding a better job pretty quickly. Or it could be some kind of mixture where, you think you're going to lose your job, but you end up just getting a switch of title and maybe some reduction of pay, but not that significant. But it would probably be like a little bit of a wild card that brings some mixed karma like that. So that's what I've got for you if you're a Libra. I know that one's a little bit, it's not as easy for the Libra risings, but don't worry, things will get, there's a lot of good things to look forward to if you're a Libra rising throughout 2021. So it's just first month of the year is frankly probably one of the most intense of the year, if not the most intense month of the year. All right, so let's go ahead and put Scorpio on the ascendant. Now we're back to a fixed sign, which means that the energy is going to be all around those angular houses. We see the full moon in the 10th toward the end of the month as well. Let's go with the 7th first. 7th house is going to be love, marriage, sexuality, others, conclusions or completion, etc. Okay. And then we're going to put into the 4th house home, family, roots, foundations, land, parents, etc. So these two areas are the ones that are being really that there's such a powerful focus on them this month. And again, if you're a fixed sign, your action is probably going to be the action you're getting this month is a lot stronger than most signs generally because these are falling in angular houses. So obviously some revolution and the themes of independence and sudden change and maybe a little bit of conflict or strife in the marriage department or in the house of relationships, sudden unexpected twists and turns of fate around your social life. This could also be a pretty kind of provocative and I want to say it's like a kind of a horny kind of a horny signature with Mars and Uranus in the 7th. Like I'm not at all unfamiliar with the Mars or Uranus energy going through a person's seventh house, and they just become more active or more aggressive or more experimental in their sex or love lives. That can definitely happen. At the same time, the theme of needing to break free, seeking greater independence can lead to some breakups or just change that needs to happen in a relationship. It's like, my wife sometimes says like, I just need a me day. And that's it. When she has that look in her eye, it's like, okay, that's conversation over. It's a me day, right? So maybe there's a me day that you need this month or a partner needs. And maybe there's a conversation about needing to have greater freedom or independence within relationships. That's the Mars Uranus energy there. The 4th house, though, it's in dialogue this month, those themes and tensions with home, family, land, property, etc. I know someone, who has this configuration who, her and her partner live with her partner's family. And so I could see this being a month where it's like, if the need for freedom and independence is being filtered through a strong set of energies coming through in the home and family area. Like, your family's driving me nuts. We all live together in one space. I need to get out of the house. I need to go on a vacation. I'm going to stay in a hotel for a night. Some kind of in other words, if the impulse for freedom or change is being inspired in part by things happening around home, family, parents, land, ancestral karma, don't be surprised. Now, finally, at the end of the month, you also have the full moon energy in your 10th house of career. So this could also link back by the end of the month to some of the themes of career, profession, work in the world, and so forth. It's brief, and this is the 4th and the 7th are really where the focus is. All right, that's what I've got for you if you're a Scorpio rising. Sometimes people will ask why certain signs, by the way, get a little shorter treatment than others. And it's generally speaking that the signs that have the action falling in the angular houses go a little bit more quickly because the themes and topics are they're so strong and vivid and sort of fundamental that you don't really need to say a lot. It's just these themes, this combination of themes, watch for it. Whereas some of the other houses, they're, what do I want to say? That the houses are a little subtler, and so it takes a lot more explaining to get into the heart of what's being activated. All right. Anyway, throughout the course of the year, you'll notice that sometimes your sign will get a lot of attention, and sometimes it doesn't get as much attention. It's usually based on which houses are being activated. So Mars and Uranus in your 6th, if you're a Sagittarius rising, the big stellium in Aquarius in the 3rd, and then the full moon at the end of the month in the 9th. All right, let's take a look at these houses. So first of all, the Uranus-Mars energy in the 6th house, work, suffering, sickness, labor, illness, injury, also selfless sacrifice. Okay. And then let's put in the 3rd house themes where the stellium in Aquarius is located. Siblings, neighbors, immediate environment, the mind, communication, let's say media, technology, etc. The 3rd house is one of the most difficult to describe because the 3rd house has so much to do with everything that sort of circumambulates around the roots. So if you think about the root in your, like, let's say you work from home, right? Your house is like your roots. But then if you work at home like I do, it's like all of the things that you do, that like the busy bee activities that you do all around your home. And that's kind of the broadest meaning of the 3rd house, which is why it's associated with your neighborhood. Your neighborhood is everything that exists in the periphery around your home. Your siblings are the people that all exist and spread out around your parents who belong to the 4th house. It's everything that kind of circumambulates around the roots. That's why the 3rd house is also associated with the mind and short journeys, and it's everything that's kind of bustling and traveling around a common origin. It's also associated with the news and with journalism and media in a sense because it's everything that happens in your city, and it's all the comings and goings happening around your city, like the current events. So when you have a big stellium like you do if you're a Sag in the 3rd house, it means that a lot about how your day-to-day life is happening is going to change this year. And there's a new order, a new way establishing itself just in terms of the hustle and flow of day-to-day life. Now, this month, that's being amplified by this very revolutionary combative energy in the 6th. So what does that mean? Well, the Mars-Uranus energy wants to rebel. It's very defiant and original, but it's going to want to fight. And in the 6th house, you have to be careful right now. Like, the need to make change in the immediate environment could be coming from a place of impatience or defiance or rebelliousness that leads to injury of some kind, personal, emotional, physical. It's also possible that you're being asked to do some great act of selfless service or sacrifice for people in your immediate environment, such as siblings or neighbors. It could also be, frankly, that there's just some degree of chaos and wildness in the immediate environment, and you have to be careful of how you're letting that impact your mind or your daily business. And while you're trying to establish some kind of new way of doing things on the day-to-day, some new common way, there's going to be some disruptions and some unexpected challenges this month for Sagittarians, some of which may be good. You may need to create a little bit of a revolution in order to create the changes that you want. Now, this is also, by the end of the month, going to highlight the full moon in the 9th house, which will bring in the question of higher beliefs, the law, ideologies, faith, your larger operating paradigm. So the third house is very common and local, and it's more about like almost like strategy and street smarts. The ninth house is going to call into question your larger values, beliefs, and commitments, like ideologically or religiously, and the topic of education and changes or challenges around learning or teaching or communication or media could also be a big theme this month. All right, so that's if you're a Sag rising. We're going to put Capricorn on the ascendant now, and we have the Uranus-Mars energy in the fifth house. We have the big stellium in Aquarius in the second, and then we're bringing in the full moon in Leo in the eighth house. So that'll be by the end of the month. So what's going on between these two areas? Well, let's spell it out again. First of all, the fifth house equals creativity, good fortune, we'll put luck, sensuality, romance, children, and pregnancy. Fifth house is really about the things that make us happy, the things that are beautiful, the things that give us pleasure, the pleasant things, as well as the kind of romantic and sexual energies. It was called the house of good fortune and the house of Venus in ancient astrology. So it has this relationship to those qualities. In modern astrology, people associate the signs with the houses. And unfortunately, that's not a correct way of understanding how the house meanings were arrived at. The fifth house has nothing to do with Leo, in other words. But if you ever want to learn more about that, that's something we study in my classes. So then we have the second house, and the second house is going to be related to money, income, and expenses. Let's say time, energy, and resources, and anyone who serves as a personal helper. Not many people know that about the second house. It was associated with people who were like your counselors or your helpers. They are your asset. They are your helping hand somehow. Like your attorney would be in the second house, or a counselor, personal counselor would be in the second house. So first of all, I feel like Capricorns are going to be thinking about making investments this month, and they could pay off, but they could end up being really reckless. Like I feel like right now, everyone's asking me about Bitcoin, and I'm not into investing, or I mean, I like don't know anything about it, so I'm not the one to ask really. But one thing that I can't help but notice this year is like that feels to me, especially January and February, like you're going to have this sort of wild enthusiasm, and it's almost like a kind of like a gambling quality, a maverick quality, rebellious renegade quality. And then that's going to be checked in February by a big square between Saturn and Uranus. So as much as I like to say for Capricorns this month, yeah, take a risk on that creative project and that investment or that purchase. Be very careful that you don't go bananas, because February could really check you and bring you down to earth or clip your wings a little bit. So that's one of the main messages I'm seeing for Capricorn risings this month, because it feels to me like Capricorn rising is trying to establish a new paradigm this year around money and finances and around your resources and who or what is helping you, or your business, maybe starting a business even. Fifth house Mars Uranus is to me like the picture of someone, like a kid, like souped up on Mountain Dew, running around a carnival, wasting all of their allowance trying to get, a rubber duck by throwing a ring around a Pepsi bottle or something. It's like there's this kind of like sporty, fun, but very reckless and defiant energy around the fifth house. Like having fun this month and taking risks creatively, it could be very rewarding, but there's also like, yeah, just be careful, because it's a very kind of, what I want to say, it feels like a risky, it could pay off. The fifth house was called the place of good fortune. It was associated with good luck, but Mars Uranus, it's a little reckless for my taste in that house. This is the kind of thing too, where it's like, don't let your kid, go to a party where there's going to be a ton of drinking. Mars and Uranus in the fifth house, like beware of, potential reckless energy around children. I think you could see breakthroughs for people who are trying to conceive with alternative like fertility treatments and things like that. But I would also be very careful, for example, of plastic surgeries this month if you're a Capricorn. Anything where you're trying to alter your appearance sort of like sexually, like enhance your appearance sexually. I'm not talking about like procedures that have to be done medically, but things that would be sort of to enhance one's sexiness or something like that. I'd be a little nervous about that with Mars and Uranus in the 5th house. So, okay, that's some of what I've got here for Capricorn rising. I do think it's going to be a good year for Capricorns overall with regard to finances and money. Going to take a little while and going to be checked at times. So be careful about getting overly, the gambling spirit could be your worst enemy this year. Be a little bit conservative with your choices. All right. So we're going to put Aquarius on the ascendant, lands all. If you're an Aquarius rising or sun signs, put all of the Aquarius stellium in the 1st house. We're taking the Mars Uranus energy in the 4th. And then we are also having the full moon in the 7th. Now we have fixed signs again. So this is going to be a very powerful one if you're an Aquarius rising. 1st house equals self, health, independence. Let's see, vitality, beginnings. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. We'll leave it there for now. And then obviously we've got the 4th house, Uranus and Mars, which is going to be home, family, roots, parents, ancestral karma, foundations, land. And then the full moon will fall in the 7th toward the end of the month. A little bit at the end of the month, you're going to a little highlight on relationships. So this is flipped from what Leo was experiencing, right? Where there's this emphasis on self this month. There's a new way of being, essentially, that's trying to establish itself in your life. When you have a Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in your 1st house, it's sort of like saying, I'm going to remodel the house of my personality. I'm going to remodel the house of my character. I'm going to remodel the house of life direction. It's a complete overhaul around identity, life direction, psychology, even appearance in the world, maybe health. So it's a big year for those topics. And also a lot of things get started when you have planets in the 1st house. Now, when you're combining that with the 4th house, Mars, Uranus, you're talking about revolution at the roots. So there's this rebellious and defiant original quality that's trying to establish itself around home, around land, around parents, around property. So you're changing because things are changing dramatically around the very most foundations of the innermost foundations of your life, especially, the topic of where you live or family karma and so forth. So these topics huge this month, and at the end you're getting a little burst, a little flurry in the house of relationships, and some balance that needs to be established between all of this emphasis on self and redefining of self, and also the needs of others or your social life or marriage partners and things like that. Very powerful month if you're an Aquarius rising. All right, last but not least, you see again see how the angular houses don't need as much treatment because the topics are so very fundamental and easy. So easy to understand and take in really quickly. All right, so finally, we have Pisces on the ascendant, and that's going to place the stellium of Aquarius in your 12th, Mars and Uranus in your 3rd, and the moon in the 6th. Now, I feel like both Virgo and Pisces, there's some challenges this month. Let's talk about them. So first of all, let's talk about the 12th house. So we have self-undoing or energies that undermine or people. We could also have themes of healing or helping those who are suffering or getting off course somehow. So we have those energies in the 12th. And then we also have 3rd house, Mars Uranus, which is going to bring up the topics of immediate environment, siblings, neighbors, everyday coming and going, mind, communication, media, tech. Okay. So and then you have, of course, the full moon in the 6th. I'll get to that in a minute. So when you have, first of all, when you have a Saturn, the great conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn in your 12th house, it's an interesting time because the impulse to create a new way of doing things, to turn a new chapter, set forth on a new era that's going to last 20 years, right? So it's a major structural shifting. Now that's taking place in a house that's frankly really difficult to get anything going in. It's a house that has to do, for example, with the labor, women when they're in labor, but before they give birth. So I could see this as a year for, frankly, between now and 2023, when you see a lot of energy shifting out of Aquarius and into Pisces with even next year, 2022, Jupiter in the first house. By 2023, Saturn in the first house. I feel like Pisces are going to be laboring to create something that isn't fully going to be integrated or understood or birthed or realized for a few years. But it's important to not get discouraged by that, but instead to just understand, like, I have a vision, I'm working toward it, but I also have to work through the weeds. I have to labor with my own shadows. There are going to be things that come up while I'm attempting to do something new that are unexpected. There's going to be a lot of learning lessons. There are a lot of lessons that I learn along the way. And it's not going to end up looking like the way that I think it's going to look like right now. Even though I might have a really strong dream or vision in place, it's going to gestate over the next few years, and the way it finally manifests, not going to look like the way that I think it does. Because of that, I would be very careful with the Mars-Uranus energy in the 3rd that might want to make changes in the immediate environment very quickly and rebelliously. I feel like the Pisces rising sun people this month could really fall on their faces trying to implement a big overhaul or a big change of some kind too quickly. When, you're going to get a taste for it if you wait a little bit into 2021, later in the spring into the summer, Jupiter is going to pop into your home sign of Pisces, and you're going to get a taste for this newness that you're trying to create. But it's really next year and the year after that the place that you want to go, in my opinion, is going to more firmly establish itself. Until then, I think there's some start and stop, back and forth, and you may be in a headspace that's ready for the change, but the actual change has to wait for those planets to get into that angular house, I think. Now, in the meantime, if you're someone who works in a 12th house setting, a helping, healing profession, working with people who are suffering, working with people who are marginalized or outcast in some way, this month could really be quite the opposite of what I'm saying. You could find that there's some really powerful energies that are bringing about change, or that you're, if you work in a hospital, you could see a lot of emphasis on changes with the way things are happening in your day-to-day life. Or you could also be inspired to become a part of some kind of political movement or something like that. You could be inspired because of some suffering that touches you very personally in yourself or in others to make some kind of immediate and swift changes. But it's the temper of your mind to be careful of this month, because that Mars Uranus in the 3rd could be a little hasty or impatient. And you're also going to see this emphasis on wanting to the heroic cause or noble mission with the full moon in Leo in your 6th house by the end of the month. So that is what I've got for all 12 signs for the month of January. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching this. I'm going to look on YouTube right now and just see what questions you have and how things have been going. Yeah, good. So we made it through. I know that these were a little abbreviated and very kind of condensed and focused. There's 2 reasons I did that. 1, because the month is actually like that. But 2, I'm also more swamped than usual this month with Kickstarter recordings and things like that. So I just wanted to present something that was a little bit more compact for the month ahead. I want to say a big thank you again to everybody who has contributed to my Kickstarter. Things are doing really well. We've even had almost like 7 or 8 people who have backed while this recording has been going on. So thank you for everyone who pitched in. I'm going to put the link in the box again, and I want to walk you through the different rewards that you can pick up. There's the Kickstarter link in the chat right now. I want to walk you through the different rewards you can pick up when you donate and support my work. You can pick up a mantra meditation video for $25 donation. I teach you how to start a mantra meditation practice. I think that's, if you want to get the most out of astrology and you're thinking like, geez, Achuta is always talking about a spiritual practice, this is one for you. This mantra meditation video, I've already taken the proceeds of it, just so that you know. I have already taken the proceeds of every single dollar that we've raised from the mantra meditation video, and I have given it to the distribution of Bhagavad Gitas in hospitals and prisons, and a really good cause of bringing Bhagavad Gita yoga wisdom to people who are suffering. So the money from that is always charity. But you can pick that up and participate and pick up a mantra meditation video, learn how to start a practice. Pledge $50, you get the Astrology of 2021 video. $75, I have a Predicting with Eclipses video where I teach you how to make sense of eclipses. $100 or more for the year ahead horoscope. So that's a full year rising or sun sign horoscope for all 12 signs. You can pick one of them, whatever one you want. Melancholy and the Mystical Saturn, a special talk on Saturn and the mystical dimension of Saturn. Nodes of the Moon talk that I did on the ancient view of the nodes of the moon and how they differ from the modern evolutionary view. It's really interesting talk if you know anything about the nodes. There's one pledge you can do where you get 3 horary questions you can ask at any point in the year ahead. It's discounted from the normal price, obviously. And then you can pledge $900, which is half off from my normal price for my first year course, $1,000 for my wife's 1-year herbal apprenticeship, which she's been teaching for about 10 years, and that's about $800 off what it usually is. Then you have you can combine 2 of the courses and the cost goes down, and you can combine all 3 of my courses and the price goes down. So if you're thinking of studying with me, this is always the best time of year to get a discount on tuition. Well, thank you so much from bottom of my heart for everyone who has already pitched in. I really appreciate it. And I would love to hear your stories about what you're seeing or noticing already in the transits of this month. Some of these transits are already underway, even though it's not January yet. We're just a few days away. So I'd love to hear your comments in the chat and the comments. And one more time, there's the link to my Kickstarter in the comments section. Big thanks to everybody for supporting this year. Here's to a wonderful 2021. I will be doing some more videos this week for you guys. One I will be doing is on the best herbal remedies or herbal herbs and plants that you can use for the most powerful energies of 2021. My wife Ashley will be here with me for that one. We'll be taking a look at Saturn and Uranus and Jupiter and Uranus in separate videos. And I've got a few extra quirky things too, like Kat and I did a video on the outer planets and why traditional astrologers often do not use the outer planets. I use them and I don't use them in very specific contexts. So we have a video talking about that. It's kind of interesting. A lot of people ask questions about that. So lots of good stuff to come. I hope you guys have a really great week and that you have a very happy new year. All right. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.